how do we use the legal system to not pay taxes because we're not legally being represented by our representatives, either through fraudulent voting or through their adherence to large donors and the big money people, foreign monies, etc., and not their constituents, in consistently acting against the interest of those who were ostensibly voting them into office. That is taxation without representation.
King William will be a different king. I think people are going to see the difference there, and I think this is very, very, very significant. President Trump and Melania, First Lady, went to the St. George's Chapel in Windsor, the #1 chapel in England. That is the #1 place to go, and they chose to go there.
Safe. Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history. And let's make war history. Let me just start. It's Friday the 19th of September. We're recording this. We're starting this at 10 minutes past 6 UK time. And the three of us recorded a few weeks ago. Since then, things have happened. And Ian, you were about to say something?
Well, you were talking about a T-shirt just before we came on and the meaning and purpose of it. So yes. I would like to start there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, do you want to start? Because you said you were wearing an arms manufacturer
T-shirt. Well, I'm wearing, from a friend of mine. Yeah, a friend of mine's company. Yeah, okay. Shield Arms up in Montana. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got some advice from a friend of mine who's a communication and media expert, and he said, wear a shirt when you do your videos. Don't turn up dressed like a social worker. So I thought, right, fair enough. So I'm wearing a shirt, right? And Graham has put on a shirt and a tie.
Ever the gentleman with all the law books behind him there.
Yes, yes.
A gentleman's gentleman.
And they're real as well.
They are real. With the smell and...
It isn't. I actually read law.
Yes. Unlike my green screen here, this is... I'm actually in my bedroom. Okay, now I'll have the links to your stuff in the description below. Graham, you are a common law lawyer, an expert in common law and in English law and the history of English law and associated topics. And EM, you are, I consider you to be a historian, ex-military, and someone who advocates for the value of what English culture has brought to the world.
We lost the audio. Rich, we lost your audio.
Oh, did you? Is it back now?
There it is. Now it's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and you are someone... EM, who advocates for the value of English culture and tradition, and all three of us advocate for sovereignty, yes, and a scourge on these globalists who are out to destroy our lives.
Yes.
And I said to you at the beginning, before we started recording, EM, about, maybe you should wear a Probity Code.
That was it, yeah, Probity Code, yeah.
Probity Code, what's that? Probitycode.com or bit.ly/make war history or bit.ly/lawful tax protest. For almost 2 years now, I've been in this conversation with HMRC because I had a small capital gains tax bill. I went to the Probity Code website. I downloaded a trust document. And the trust document states that HMRC can have these funds provided they can demonstrate that none of these funds will be used in violation of the International Criminal Court Act, the Terrorism Act, and the Accessories and Aiders and Abettors Act, which those three acts combined say it's a criminal offence to give any money. Hold on a second, Graham. We'll come to that in a second. It's a criminal offence to give any money to any organisation that is going to fund or facilitate genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, or acts of terrorism as defined in those statutes. And do you know what they do, Graham? They keep writing to me saying you have to pay because of some income tax legislation. I said, that's all good, but these statutes bind you. You have to honour these statutes, and so do I. So give me an exemption in case law or in statute that says that it doesn't apply in this circumstance. And they haven't, and they keep going around the houses and saying you have to pay. And I said, look, this matter is settled because you have to honour the Recognition of Trusts Act and these other acts. Now, this is a legal, lawful way of holding on to our own funds and protesting against what this government are doing, because any money that that they collect, directly or indirectly, goes into a consolidated fund and then it's shared out. And I've just realised my camera's not on.
It's on.
Now that I know you can see me, but it's not showing on the recording. It's me. It's me. There you go.
I'm having a battle with a cat behind the screen here. So
no problem. Me. People turn up for the cat. Graham, you showed the book. Do you want to say something about that?
Well, there's two things I would say to you. Yeah. And again, don't listen to British lawyers and British solicitors, right? So read law yourself. Trust law is different to common law. It is not the common law. Trust law is a different thing, right?
Yeah.
If anyone wants to go and find this book, right, it is the Bible of trust law.
Lewin on trusts.
And it's Lewin on trusts. Everything you ever wanted to know, every single legal case, this one was up till, I can't remember when it was. This is the 19th edition. And literally, I mean, I just had a friend that had a problem with trusts and a will. And he came to me and said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "I won't do that. But what I will do is contact the lawyer that wrote this book on your behalf and put you in contact with that lawyer," right? It's not common law. It's trust law.
Yeah.
It is different. But that is the book. But anyone you can go and get a second-hand copy of this, probably anywhere between 100 quid and 250 quid. If you try to buy a brand new latest edition copy, it's about $2,500, right? But there's a single book which is known as the Bible of trust law. So what you've just said, with reference, so put it in layman's terms, right? If there was a war tomorrow and the government tried to force you into that law, and you said, "I am a Christian, I am a conscientious observer, I will not fight in the war." Right? Some people call them people cowards. Yeah. There's a few films that you can go and watch, real films, that will show you that they acted as medics and did more as medics and showed that they were not cowards. They just would not kill another human being. Right? So there's positives and negatives, but what you've just said is correct. The council tax in particular, they are paying for the police. So your local police in England is partly subsidised from your council tax. If the police and others are acting politically, you have the right to say, "We're not paying council tax. We're not paying for that. That's not our political opinion. We're paying for local services." And that also, so just to make sure everyone's aware, it was 1924, I believe, that they brought in the PAYE scheme, which is pay as you earn, which means that your employer directly taxes you and gives it to the government, right? Technically, that's unlawful, because one of the major ways that the people could protest was to withhold tax. If you didn't believe, or if you believed that the government was doing something that was not in the public interest, you could withhold tax. It's one of the things, by the way, that caused Peterloo, or otherwise known as Peterfields in Manchester, when the British attacked us as a group of people in Manchester. They cut down 19 of us. The cavalry charged the 70,000 crowd that was making a declaration to pay no tax and that they was demanding the vote as working class people. And the British even bayoneted a baby, right? So when you understand that they was making a declaration, the declaration had been made in Birmingham, the declaration had been made in Spitalfields in London, right? And then it went there. So you had literally, just think of the population, hundreds of thousands of working people saying, "We ain't paying tax." And what was their answer? To stick a bayonet in a baby.
Yeah, and I think one of the mistakes that people make is that somehow, "Oh, we're different now." No, we're still human beings with the same impulses and the same level, same potential for degeneracy.
Yeah,
as human beings always had. I'll come to you in a second, Ian, because there's another point, Graham, because like I said earlier, any fine, fee or tax or levy collected locally or centrally, TV license, council tax, some of that goes, well, all of it goes into the consolidated fund, and then it's dispersed to various departments. And the council tax, while it may pay for local services, and some of it will not go in the consolidated fund sometimes, it will go into to pay for council employees. And the council employees, some of their salary that they've got from the council tax, from local people, then goes into the consolidated fund and is then used to support the killing of people in foreign lands versus being used to take care of people here.
So not only do I agree with what you've just said, I want everyone listening to this to understand what I'm about to say, right? The Prime Minister of the UK, is on somewhere in the region of 120 to 130,000 pound a year, right? The CEO of Croydon Council in London, right, South Croydon Council, is on 950,000 pounds a year, right? No. So when you understand that that money is filtered off, right, to pay for this criminal enterprise against the people. Once people understand what's going on, they should stop paying their council tax.
And use this process. It's legal, it's lawful. And one of the things I always had, Graham, is that I could always, at any point, say, okay, I give up, have the money. I never sent them any money. I sent them a promissory note. But that not once have they threatened to take me to court. Not once.
If you know what you're doing, without going into too much detail, I've just won a court case in the High Court in front of 2 judges, a large gallery of people with reference to the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, right? Yep. Just to make sure I'm clear on this, they have now appealed on a very narrow appeal point, in other words, grabbing at straws, because they do not want me standing in front of 2 judges with three other witnesses telling the judges what happened at that election, right? So just to make sure everyone's aware, it's now in front of the Court of Appeal, and on 16th of October, they got an expedited appeal, right? Which normally would take normal people 18 months, 1.5 years just to get an appeal in this country, right? They done it in less than a week and got the actual appeal date for the 16th of October. That's how scared they are, and they're scared of people like us that actually know the law and are presenting it to High Court judges. So now I'm against another 3 High Court judges on the 16th of October. If people do what you are saying, and it has to be done the right way, there is a process for it. If you turn around and say, I am not paying tax because in effect I am a conscientious observer to what is going on and what you are doing with that money, therefore I am not paying you, you have to tell me at which parts of that money, for example, DEI, right? So if they're training Common Purpose or doing any of this nonsense in the background, and they're pushing that forward, you can say, I disagree with that. It's a political ideology. I'm not paying it, right? That is perfectly lawful. In the same way is that you, and again, this is a biggie for everyone, you can legitimately stop paying your TV license. Yeah. Right? And there is a process for that. Do it, put it on record, that's it. And walk away from them and stop funding these people. They're using your money to enslave you. They're using your money to kill people in other countries. When again, if you really want to look at the Fabian Society, the Communist Party, etc., you must understand that these people believe in no borders, right? So they in effect use immigrants against the population. It's their type of warfare. And what you need to do is think about what they're doing and stop it. So when people say legitimately, I am not paying tax, and this is the reason why. And by the way, you can actually make an application to the High Court to remove yourself from the PAYE system and still keep your job.
Oh, Graham, you and I need that would be a separate video. Now, I just want to say, and then I'll come to you, Ian. You've been so patient. Thank you so much. But the process that Probity Co. are using, so far has proven to be watertight, and it's referencing the International Criminal Court Act and the Terrorism Act, which make it a criminal offence for them to ask me for the money and for me to give them the money, and it's also a criminal offence for me not to report them for asking me for the money. So it's pretty watertight, and it works for TV license, council tax, parking fines, all sorts of stuff. Okay, thank you, Graham. Thank you for that. Links in the description below, probityco.com or bit.ly/makewarhistory, bit.ly/ lawful tax protest. You people watching, you might actually support one or both of the wars. Fine. You might be opposed to open borders. Use it as a protest for that. You might be opposed to the propaganda by the BBC. Use it as a protest against that. Whatever it is, you might be opposed to digital ID, as I am. Use it as a protest against that. Okay, Ian, thank you. Over to you, mate.
So I'm not a legal scholar, as the good Honorable Graham is. I do know that this country was founded on one principle: no taxation without representation.
Yep.
And one needs to really ask themselves if paying taxes in the United States is actually legal, if none of the voting system is legitimate, and even if some of the voting is legitimate when people are in office, they're actually working against the promises and commitments they made to those who voted them in which case there is no representation and therefore should be no taxation. So what the legal codes are here, and it's got to be coded somewhere, because again, no taxation without representation was the argument, the primary argument, one of many, but the primary argument. And just up until the 1990s, it was still something that was spoken of here in the United States, decreasingly since the 70s. So one has to wonder, what are the corresponding codes and legal opinions? Because I know people have worked on, and I'm not talking about the free man stuff and the crazy sovereigntist, etc., which I believe, again, very fundamentally, is His Majesty Alfred gave us. Alfred coded individual sovereignty into the Dooms of Alfred to ensure that that was one of the three pillars of, in fact, the pillar of English civilization and society. And his son and grandson fought it out, and we fought it out ever since. And they've held, and unfortunately, until we allowed this European parasite to come in when they took over the crown in 1688,
yep.
And all that's happened since. But in the United States, I said this in another conversation with somebody just a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I know, and the guys like me know this is going to blood. We're being forced to it. But all the legal stuff has to be done. All of it, and it needs to be done very properly. People need to realize that before the English Civil War become the American Revolution occurred, there was 20 years, 25 years of all this, exactly as Graham's doing, this diligent effort to get redress through the courts. Right. And to get everything, all the grievances in, not only to His Majesty the King, which really it rarely ever went to His Majesty, they went to the court and the ministers, right? And died there. The king rarely heard about any of it. Look at the diaries and all that stuff, right? But what was it? It was the English citizens, the colonials, the English citizens, and the nobles who actually owned, right, under the Royal Charter, owned those lands, trying to get redress in the courts, both the crown courts and the colonial courts. And in the process of 20, 25 years, getting all of these legal arguments in court records. Even if the ruling went against them, they had to get that done, because then when it went to blood, there was legal justification for it. And more importantly, the intent of the blood was not to just wipe the, French Revolution, the type of thing, what would happen later, but was to restore the thing, the rightness in English common law, rightness in the crown, in the court judiciary, rightness of the rule of law. And so these things have to happen. And here in the United States right now, there's a huge effort on a restoration of constitutionality. And it's all these lawsuits that are happening. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But what I'm not seeing is this effort, and it has to happen not just at the federal level, but the states levels as well. In fact, more at states levels, because we didn't have a federal income tax till just over a century ago, right? We didn't have this, so two things happening here in the that need to happen here in the United States. One, we need to have the very same effort that Graham's doing and that Crypto you're talking about, which is how do we use the legal system to not pay taxes because we're not legally being represented by our representatives, either through fraudulent voting or through their adherence to large donors and the big money people, foreign monies, etc., and not their constituents, in consistently acting against the interest of those who were ostensibly voting them into office. That is taxation without representation. That's one piece. The second piece related to that and this has not happened in the UK, and Graham, please correct me if I'm wrong, is we did have something happen last year, a year prior, which was the striking down of Chevron, the Chevron doctrine. And the Chevron doctrine was what allowed all of these government entities to set in place all these regulations and rules, all of which had these punitive, fee structures, cost structures, et cetera, which were easily $1 trillion a year. That was struck down, right? Only lawmakers can make laws, regulatory bodies cannot. But that's the case. But there's thousands of cases going back 40 years related to that where they lost. Now those cases have to be re-adjudicated, and that's another, remedy against this indirect taxation that's happening. And so on our side here, I see us going after properly through the constitutional courts, right, through the Supreme Court, going after the Chevron doctrine to remove this indirect taxation. But again, it's still got to get fought out in all these different cases, right? Thousands of cases. The piece I'm not seeing here, though, is this movement that you guys are doing there, which is this taxation without representation. Yeah. But again, on the converse side, I don't see you guys doing that. How do you invalidate these regulatory bodies and all this indirect tax, like the TV tax, et cetera, that you guys have, right? And council taxes, et cetera. So,
well, just to make sure, so you are, the Chevron cases are very important. There's a number of really important cases in America, which I keep an eye on. So again, people should understand I'm a constitutionalist. So what I look for are the particular cases, which is whether people like President Trump or not is irrelevant to me. The people come out in force. And it's the people of America that I trust, not Trump, right? Because they realise what he was trying to put in place was take back America constitutionally. Right? Yes. That means, by law, they are reinforcing the Constitution, which is what we are attempting to do over here.
Yes.
But to get to what you've just said there, I'll give you another example of that. They passed somewhere in the region of 50 to 100 laws in Parliament in the last 70 years, so after the Second World War, without the consent of the Crown, right?
Yes.
That is unlawful.
Correct. Right? Those are not actually laws.
One of them laws is completely unlawful.
Correct.
And one of them laws was the one, and I've said we should do a Greek litigation order, which in America they call a class action, right? Yep. Which basically brought into effect the Local Finance Act, which then took the money from the local councils, but then give the local council the right to charge you council tax. That enabling act, and by the way, the Nazis used what were called enabling acts, right? That enabling act is what created your council tax unlawfully, and it was brought into law unconstitutionally because at the top of the bill it actually stated that the Crown has no involvement with this act. That means they're telling you it was passed unconstitutionally and unlawfully. Every single act of Parliament has to be approved, even in America, has to be approved by the executive.
By the executive, yes.
So,
so again, it's not so much illegitimate is the right word, right? It's an illegitimate law. Yeah.
Okay, just so I understand this, are you saying because the monarch hasn't assented to it and put their signature on?
Yep.
So it's not necessarily. So there is
participate.
There's a process they use in England, which I believe is unconstitutional anyway, which is letter patent, or what they call a nod through now. So where the lords themselves nod and allow that's not assent. I'm talking about explicitly that they passed an enabling act that said these laws, if you use this wording, the Crown does not have to assent to this law because it's nothing to do with the Crown. That is illegal.
Yes,
that's what they did.
Yes, because it's just recognize because it's a violation of the Coronation Oath Act.
Right. To understand this, you need to understand how acts of Parliament are passed into law.
Yeah.
The first, you need what's known as law drafters. The law drafters are just barristers that draft the law. they're supposed to know what the Constitution is and know that they can't put anything in that bill that affects your constitutional rights. If they do, they have to strike it out before it even goes to its first reading. It goes to the first reading and it's read to the members of Parliament. Any member of Parliament is supposed to know the Constitution and say, take that out. You can't have that, right? Because it goes against the people's rights. It then goes, let's say it fails that process, it then goes for a second reading to the House of Lords. The House of Lords are supposed to pick up on it. And if they don't pick up on it, it then goes back to the third reading to the House of Commons. They're supposed to pick it up. There's all these safeguards put in place, right? And the last part of the process, it goes to the monarch for assent.
Yep.
And what they've done with this Enabling Act is they created this, and it was Roy Jenkins, I believe it was, who created the law, who was a communist, right? And basically removed assent. And so that these particular laws made under that Enabling Act were under constitutional law are null and void and have no effect. And one of those laws was the Local Finance Act, which is what they're using to charge you council tax.
Okay. I'm not challenging, I'm curious, and I'm looking at legislation.gov.uk, the Local Government Finance Act 1988, and the introductory spiel, the second paragraph, it says, be it enacted by the Queen's most excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons, in this present Parliament assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows. Is there something missing?
Before they put that act through,
Yep.
they then pull in this other act, right?
Yep.
Which is by Roy Jenkins. You'd have to do a search on it. Roy Jenkins created an act of Parliament that removed the assent, and then it tells you. I mean, I've got a document somewhere. It's on my other computer, and it tells you there was about 100 acts that they used, right? And they used that one enacted parliamentary act that removed assent, and the Queen at the time it bypassed the Queen completely.
So here we have what are called, I don't know if we have them actually. So if I might, again, I'm no legal scholar. I have studied the law extensively, because one must, right? We live in a common law or in a legal system, but we have a problem here in the United States where for a bill to get passed, it has to be signed by the executive, by the president.
Correct.
And so they mash all kinds of trash in there, right? And without the presidents having the ability to line item veto, and most of those are independent bills that climb up to the fact where they get folded into a master bill. That master bill may have the signature, of the president because he didn't have assay earlier on to say, I won't approve that. I'm not going to sign that. And he doesn't have line item veto authority where he can go into a bill and say, I sign off on this. I'm not going to sign this into a law, etc. So what winds up happening is you get a lot of lower level things that the executive would never sign off on, but they get rolled up into this master bill. And then in order to get the master bill passed, which does have things that they want, there are line items in there that came through other bills that would not get his signature if they were sent independently. So is that, Graham, what you're saying here is something that's happened? Is that because historically the Senate would look here, and there the House of Lords would be looking at here in the US, it's a little bit different because it's the states, there it's the Lords and the manorial estates, right? So in the English constitutional system, which even goes back, right? It goes all the way back to Alfred. The House of Lords is looking at what's coming from Parliament, from the Commons, and determining what the monarch would or would not sign off on, right? Constitutional and legal at the time, and they're doing the House of Lords is supposed to be doing the pruning or sending back to the Commons to say,
Correct.
Right?
So it is a protection mechanism to stop the people losing their rights. The ultimate.
No, totally get that.
The reason why Parliament exists, right? And if you look at even if you look at the oath of congressmen and representatives in America, it is to protect the people and the Constitution, right? So, but again, Sir William Wade in this country said, and when I say this country, I speak of England. He said you need to change the judicial oath because the judicial oath supports the sovereign it does not support the people and the Constitution. You need to change it to the American oath, in effect, right? So when you see in America people standing up in either the House of Representatives or Congress and start championing, we need to remove the Second Amendment, they have breached their oath. Like they have perjured their oath and need to be removed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And anything that a representative or a congressman puts forward that breaches the Constitution of the United States of America and the people's rights, they should be removed. But it's the same in England.
No, I totally agree. But there's one caveat there. And one caveat is that if what they're putting forward is an amendment to the Constitution to go through the formal amendment process, that is acceptable. But anything that is going against the Constitution in any form or fashion without attempting to go through the formal constitutional amendment process, that's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It should be struck out. But if it's in the format of an amendment through the formal process, that has to be accepted. It also requires a supermajority, and it requires, often it requires votes of the people and all those types of things, right?
Okay. Yeah, so in the American Constitution, there is it's never been used. I don't believe it's ever been used. I'm not sure if it's Article 5. It basically says that the states can create their own amendment.
Yeah, States Convention. Yeah, States Convention. It takes 26 or 27 of the states. Right now, I think we're at 22 states that are ready to take things into their own hands. Yeah, this is why they're flooding our country with a whole lot of foreigners, because they're diluting the voting pool, and they're diluting, right?
Exactly.
And what is that specifically doing? It's preventing a state's a state's Congress or whatever it's called, right? So that's the article I wrote this morning, by the way. I think I sent it to both of you, right? But people need to look at, okay, get it. Yes, it's the voting block, it's the dilution, et cetera. But what they're really doing is they are moving to collapse. How do you move to collapse? You completely invalidate the judiciary and the legal system, and you overwhelm it with complexity and process and procedure, and you heavily bias. That's one level. The other level is you flood countries with people who will never, ever fit into that country. They'll never be part of the society, the civilization, et cetera. And why do you do that? It's the same thing we did to the Middle East, Africa, other parts of the world when the empire pulls back. Why? Because you leave permanent ethnic, cultural, religious violence behind. Eastern Europe, we did the same, so that you can tune that up and down as you need to keep those people from ever recovering, from ever cleaning up the judiciary, from ever recovering their sovereignty, etc. So
yeah, that's a great point, and it neatly segues us into where I want to take it, because I want to speak about the Unite the Kingdom march, and also Trump's visit with recent visit to the UK,
which was brilliant. At least the crown portion of it was brilliant.
I want to find out more from you and your take on that, right? But I just want to say, I just found out it's the Royal Assent Act in 1967, passed during Roy Jenkins' tenure as Home Secretary. It repealed the Royal Assent by Commission Act 1541 and introduced a simpler method. And that is according to Grok. So check
simpler method.
Yes, simpler. Let's make things simpler by just giving you a CBDC and a digital wallet, biometric.
Well,
it would just make things simpler.
Plug you into the matrix, into little battery pods.
Now, what you were saying about leaving like conflict, which they stir up, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Northern Ireland, North Cyprus, South Cyprus, 4 different Kurdistan countries, right? Instead of one nation.
Correct. One
of the things that occurs to me, and I credit both of you, as well as Tom Luonga and Alex Craner and Promethean Action, for my education. I'm not at all opposed to the Unite the Kingdom march. I think it's really, really important. People should be able to celebrate their national country and have their flag and stuff, right? It's as valuable as the English flag is as valuable as any other flag. But what it occurs to me is this is gang versus counter gang. That's what the City of London are doing. That's what the imperialists are doing. They are deliberately taking actions which favor a smaller community, stoking resentment with a larger community, who then turn on the smaller community. It's how come they were able to rule over India, where where Muslims were in a minority, they'd favor the Muslims. The Hindus would get pissed off rightfully and turn on the Muslims, and where the Hindus were in a minority, favor the Hindus, and the Muslims would turn on the Hindus. So it's gang versus counter gang. That's what I see is happening, and it's going to get
Yes.
hairier.
It's called British divide and rule. It's the original colour revolution.
Correct.
They were the ones who honed it.
Yes, and it goes all the way back to Venice. It actually goes all the way back to Rome before. That's what the Romans did. They would move entire populations. Okay, so I differ with you very much, Rich, because I come from a war-fighting background. All right, I've seen this around the world. We've had to go kill people in parts of the world because of this. People who ethnically shouldn't have been there, but were put there by the French or the English, the British, right? This ancient system at some point. Some of them were put there 2,000 years ago by the Romans. Yeah. And we're still fighting that out in Eastern Europe. Yeah. Right? So I'm going to put a little thing out there, and this is where I differ, okay? We're either going to go through a short window of violence to reset the ethnic cultural populations, or we're going to spend the next 300 years fighting this always. Yep. Because that's what they do. So there is no way to talk our way out of this because they are the talkers. They own the talking. They own. Now, we do need to talk. We do need to do legal stuff because we need to try and keep this from going too far, and we need to keep it within bounds of, acceptable humanity. But I'm going to tell you something right now. The assassination of Charlie Kirk just demonstrated that batshit insane white boys can do some pretty extraordinary murder when they're driven to it. And everybody thinking that low testosterone and all, white boys are too weak. Sorry, they just crazies in this totally insane belief system and idea just assassinated Charlie Kirk on live TV as a message. And not even as an ideological message, as a game. Yeah. So we're either going to go through a short period of some pretty rough stuff. And by the way, they've got their terrorists here. They've got all the, the British system, which has now moved itself safely. The headquarters and command and control is now safely moved out. We're either going to go through some 3 to 5 years of some pretty nasty stuff, getting rid of people that should not frickin' be here. And we need to do it in a way that recognizes that it's not necessarily their fault they're there. They followed the money. Right? The enemy is the people who use the money and who control the systems and the legislation and all that. But these people still have to go. Because if not, we're going to be like Eastern Europe. We're going to be like Africa. We're going to be like the Middle East, where we have nonstop war and conflict and ethnic hatred that gets tuned up and tuned down here and there, as the financialists want, for centuries. It's that simple. Now, we got to do everything we can legally. We have to do everything we can to restore constitutionality. We have to do everything we can do to restore the power of the executive, including there in the United Kingdom, in the British Isles. The Crown's executive powers need to be restored. Correct. But to do that, you're going to have to secure the Crown physically. Physically.
Which could lead us onto Trump's visit, right? But I want to see what Graham has to say about this.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't mean this with any disrespect to any of my American friends, right? People in America largely have this, I don't know, almost fanciful look at the royals. We're sitting there with their crowns on and being in carriages. I mean, that was all part of
and
the
all
show.
Powerful and
and everyone. Oh, it's amazing. Let me tell you something. There are many times in English history that the Crown has gone pear-shaped, right? And they have been absolute tyrannous crooks, right? So people need to understand that an enemy, if he knows that and by the way, the Glorious Revolution did not make Parliament sovereign, it separated the powers. So there was a separation of power.
There's a balance.
And no individual could take control and become tyrannous, right? What we've now seen is it being dragged back in. Parliament has absorbed all the powers of the monarchy, right? Some people say the monarch has taken control of Parliament. That is nonsense.
Nonsense.
Right? Parliament has taken the control of the monarch.
Yes.
And instead of having a single tyrannous monarch and despotism from a single person, we now have 650 despotism. Despots have taken.
To say nothing of the councils and all of the lower level despots that are empowered by.
Yeah.
You have
And if you look-
thousands
and if you look at
upon
the English
thousands of despots. Yeah.
And if you look at the English Constitution, and particularly the furtherance of the English Constitution and of the Act of Settlement of 1701, it explicitly states that you can only have a position of power being an MP, Member of Parliament, police constable, any authority in England if you are born of English parents, plural, right, or, right, Scottish, Welsh, or Irish. So you are a Dominion, right? If you're one of the Dominions, then you can still be in an English Parliament. Don't forget that 1701 was before it was the British Acts of Union. But really crucial to this, because I do want people to make sure, right? A lot of people think that that's ethno-nationalism. It isn't, right? The reason it was brought in was because the Dutch, who had rescued England, right, started putting all their people into position and started robbing England and taking our rights. So they created the Acts of Settlement of 1701 to stop that from happening. And by the way, just in case anyone didn't know this, the Dutch are white, right?
Yeah.
So what they were saying was, if you are of a different culture or a different nation, you cannot have authority over the English or the Scots or the Irish or the Welsh, right? We govern ourselves. You do not govern us. And by the way, that was adopted in part in the United States of America, which is why you cannot be the president of the United States of America unless you are a natural born citizen, right? It is a way of protecting the culture of that nation.
Unless you're Obama. And they
Exactly.
fake your birth, right? So so Graham, thank you very much for better articulation. I want to, as a warfighter, right, special operations kind of warfighter, all right, unconventional warfare guy. Don't think for a second that people know who the crown is, right? Praetorian problem is very real. And who pays for the crown's security? Parliament. Who owns 100% of the crown's security for centuries? Parliament. So what monarch, and Graham and I had this conversation, I think Friday, didn't we, Graham?
Yeah.
Right. There have been monarchs that have decided they didn't want to participate in this abuse of their people, and they've abdicated. And I think, to be quite frank, even though I don't want to give him any benefit of the doubt, I think Edward VII was one of those. And so he used the excuse, because if you look at some of the writings about what's her name, the 4-time divorcee, et cetera, right? She didn't enter into any of that willingly. I think he used her as an excuse to get out of being a king and screwing his own people. Right? There have been others that have done the same. There have been some that drank themselves to death and, gone off and died. And so point being is this. And there's been nobles and royals that have been killed as a message. And I doubt very much that is not what happened to Lady Diana, as a direct message to William and Harry and His Majesty.
I agree.
Stay in line.
I agree.
So here's the thing, if I may, we can't know, and there's been heavy investment for centuries to sell all the tropes and all the ideas and concepts about how evil and malevolent and Satanist the royals are. Heavy investment. Heavy. It's what you do when you have a puppet monarch, right? When you have a puppet leader. Okay. Maybe so. Here's where my mind is, right? Constitutionally and historically, there is executive powers in the form of the crown, just as there is in the presidency here in the United States. Okay, we don't know if anything they've been telling us about the king converting to Islam or being a Weffi or any of that is real. He's done what he was told to do with a knife to his kids' throats. Okay, now maybe he does agree with that, but we don't know. How can we know? Right? That's our biases, that our confirmation biases that they're feeding on. Well, there is one way to know. England and the English peoples, and that includes the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, right? Including these Irish that think they've broken away, are now being completely replaced by European monies that wants the Irish gone. Yeah. The Irish need to come home. The Irish need to come back to the family, right? Family feud needs to be set aside right now, and the English-speaking peoples need to fucking come together as a family. Forget my language, guys, okay? But here's the deal. There is an immense weapon available, legal, constitutional, historical, prerogative weapon available to the English-speaking peoples, primarily the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland and parts of the Commonwealth, that's in the form of the crown. March on the crown. Don't march on the crown in violence. Don't go French guillotines. Don't do Romanov, stuff. March on the crown. Occupy all the royal estates politely, respectfully, forcefully, though. Don't let them flee. Don't let anybody else in either. And then find out whether, and hold the crown to its responsibility.
Yeah.
And then find out who they are, right? And you'll find out in one way. Do they, once they know that they are physically secure, because there's 1 million people surrounding the palaces and surrounding them, and they know they're secure from SAS or MI6 or Americans or whatever it is, or some crazy Pakistani or, whatever, and they know they're physically secure, then you wait and see what they do and how they act. And if they then adhere to their oath and adhere to their constitutional responsibilities and the royal prerogatives, and they do it legitimately and in the right ways on behalf of the people to reset the judiciary and parliament specifically, then you know the reality of that monarch. And maybe the damage has been done to Charles his whole life, and I've watched it. My whole life I've known about Charles. His mother's right there on my wall, right? So I don't know the reality of him. I think the damage to Charles has been done. Also, if you look at his hands, he's got severe kidney problems. He's not healthy. If the king needs to abdicate for his health reasons and hand it over to William, okay. But here's the thing. The people have, I'm going to swear, okay? The people have fuck all idea who the monarch is or what the crown really thinks, because they don't provide the security to the monarch and the crown, and they haven't for 2 centuries, 2.5 centuries. And people who do not live, and I've seen it in other countries, right? Leaders, country leaders, community leaders, etc., who have their securities owned by somebody else, right? It's called duress, operating, functioning under duress. We do not know the true will and intent of the crown, because the crown is being held hostage by people who will kill them.
Yep.
So yeah, go ahead.
Now we got about half an hour left, right? I want to cover about Trump's visit to the crown, because that ties into this, right? So Graham, do you want to comment on that, on what you saw, and then we'll come to you, Ian?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
In terms of what I saw,
Trump's visit.
I mean, I've got different opinions on Trump's visit, President Trump, I should say.
Respect.
I believe that he has sat down, and you can see that they're coming together on some issues. What I've noted from the visit, first of all, they didn't go out and see the people. He was under what I would describe as extreme security measures there, right? They never took him out to the people. He run around the estate in the carriages as part of a,
It's a closed system. Yeah, it was a closed system.
It was completely closed. And the reason for that is because of Sadiq Khan, basically. People don't realise that Sadiq Khan was under investigation by MI5. And by the way, I've got the documentation of this. I was one of the people who stood up and shouted at him, why are you one of the Tooting Circle? Right? And the Tooting Circle was a small group of terrorists in Tooting, and he is part of it, right? And he was visiting.
Now you're Home Secretary. You're bloody Home Secretary. Sorry.
Well, Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London, and it's one of the reasons why they kept it at Windsor, so it was close to London but not in London, and it was outside of the remit of Sadiq Khan. So, but one of the most important parts of that whole event was the closeness of the First Lady and
Kate, Her Royal Highness.
Right?
Yeah.
So what they're actually showing you is very, very soon, either the king is going to die or he's going to abdicate. I believe he's already abdicated, right? And what you will see is King William and Kate be the proper king and queen of England, right? And that closeness and that bond will return to America from. By the way, everyone should understand this. If you're American, listen to this. Your special relationship is not with the British. It is with the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, and the Irish, not the British.
Because we are English. We have to remember, we didn't separate. I personally believe very fundamentally. So I want to get back to the Kate. I think that's absolutely important. I want to get back to the visit. But this very thing you said, what people need to understand, and just read the founding fathers of America, they all considered themselves Englishmen. Whether they were Scottish, Irish, Welsh, it didn't matter. And they were trying for a quarter of a century, and even in the war, and even after the war, were trying to remain good, loyal Englishmen. I believe very fundamentally, and I think George III helped us, quite honestly, and some nobles, is that I believe that the piece that couldn't be said, but the piece that really was the reason why the nobles who backed us and the colonials who did the revolution, Civil War become Revolutionary War, did it, is because they were loyal Englishmen who were not going to be British and were not going to allow this thing to happen, and were able to break the colonies away from that future Britishization, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the current visit. I agree with you, Sadiq Khan, but I think it's the MI5, the new Home Secretary, because the day she was made Home Secretary, which makes her the direct head of MI5, right, with Yvette Cooper, who is not direct, but ostensibly the head of MI6, it now made of the United Kingdom a direct threat to President Trump, not just in London, not just under Sadiq, but MI5 threat. The day she was made Home Secretary, I can't remember who it is, Secretary of State, or I can't remember who it was, but through Tulsi Gabbard, a message was sent to the United Kingdom that we are not going to share intelligence with you. Because she is made the Home Secretary, specifically, we're not going to share anything with you that has anything to do whatsoever with anything related to the President Trump's or any of our other dignitaries' travels there. Because you now have a insider threat who is the head of MI5. That would be the same as having a known terrorist as the head of FBI here in the United States. Okay.
Now you're talking about Shabana Mahmood.
Yes. Yes.
Muslim.
Yes.
So what are her links to terrorism?
I don't know necessarily about her links to terrorism directly, because to be quite frank, I didn't pay attention to who she was until she was put in office. Right? It is her open support for Muslim immigration, unfettered Muslim immigration, and her looking the other way at the rape gangs and covering for that. Her also looking the way of terrorists. How many Islamic terrorists got there in the end? Right, it's the same. It's exactly. She now is above him. Right, London's by far the most important city, and now she's got control over MI5, and that's unbelievably dangerous. That's like we just took one of Osama bin Laden's sons, and we just made him the head of the FBI. Graham, can't hear you. Are you on mute?
You're on mute. Still on mute, Graham.
Sorry,
you're having a stroke.
Am I open now?
Yeah.
Right, so just to make sure, you're right in what you're saying. So first of all, the person who controls the whole of London and its security is Sadiq Khan, right?
Yep.
He's already been investigated by the security service for visiting terrorists in prisons as a personal friend, right? Yes. Not as a lawyer, not as an MP, as a personal friend, right? And he is part of the Tooting Circle.
And now the entity that investigated him is in control of her.
Right. So now go back and look at that person who is now the Home Secretary. In 2015, she stood on the shores of, I think it was Greece, and she said, "We welcome these immigrants." Right? That's she's now standing up saying we're going to stop immigration. In 2015,
which isn't happening.
There is a video of her actually saying, "We welcome the immigration." Right?
Well, and look what she's done while she was in
charge.
Yeah. Okay. So wonderful. So I didn't mean to quibble a point, but it's important, right? The threat there was way beyond Sadiq Khan. And the day she was put in control, our intelligence services from the highest level told your intelligence services, we're not sharing intel. That means travel plans, all of it. Okay. So closed loop. Okay. One of the things, one is the body posture. You always pay attention to body posture. Yes, His Majesty walked. So first off, I used to be in the old guard in Washington, D.C., 3rd Infantry Regiment. I was a tomb sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and then I was on the presidential casket platoons. I've done these ceremonies, foreign dignitary ceremonies, both as a tomb guard at the Tomb of the Unknown and Wreath Lane, and then in and out, what we call in and outs, right? Not on the presidential casket platoon, that's for funerals, but we do other duties, okay? A foreign dignitary always walks in front of the local leader. That's the whole point, right? but it's the body posture you look for of His Majesty while Trump was trooping whatever, I can't remember what it's called.
The troops or whatever.
Yeah. It's trooping the colors or whatever. So I haven't done it in over 30 years, so forgive me. My memory's not so good. But the point is if you look at His Majesty just as Her Majesty years ago, His Majesty is relaxed and calm. There's no subservience. There's also no dominance. It is a peer relationship between them, and you can see it in the genuineness of their conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Between Charles and Trump.
His Majesty.
Okay, His Majesty.
Call him Charles. His Majesty and the President, right?
See each other as peers.
I might not like the fellow, but he's still the king, right? So, and I also am honest enough to know that I don't know the fellow personally, and I don't know that most everything that we know about him hasn't been carefully curated to make us hate the man. So he's still the king, okay? Give me 1 second. We had a traitor as king a century, almost a millennia ago, and he was still the king, and that's John, right? Just bastard, but he was a king. Okay, point I'm getting at is this, though. So that was one piece. The other piece is the dinner, because in these society things, that's the real importance. That's what you watch. You watch the formal dinner because that's in your home. And we got to remember Windsor is their home, right? Okay. And it's seen all kinds of dignitaries, etc. Okay. So the state dinner, the formal dinner, this isn't a state dinner. This is a royal dinner, right? Okay. That was genuine. The bond between His Majesty and Trump, the bond between her, the First Lady and Kate Middleton, between the President and Kate Middleton. Like there's a wonderful picture of Trump leaning over, President Trump leaning over, smile, and she's smiling back. And I said, I'd be flirting too, even it would cost me my head, right? Okay.
Not with President Trump, right? Just so we're clear.
No. Thank you. I am from San Francisco. We do have to wonder these things. Yeah. But the point is this. There's two things that Trump said. And he said it, the first one more than once, okay? And different locations, because you don't repeat yourself in the same location, because then it comes off as supercilious, right? Okay. He made sure that he genuinely articulated body posture and everything matched as a former interrogator, right? I look for these things, not just what they say, but okay. He said that His Majesty was a good king. And he said it more than once. And my suspicion is, and I've had this for some years, is that Her Majesty and now His Majesty have been working with the powers behind Trump to try and restore what they can of the power to the people. Because Trump didn't just get into office in the Americas off of American power. Old English power is involved. These are old, right? Like my adopted family, the Burlingames, were Midlanders there in England, old Saxon family, and they're original stock Americans, got here in the 1640s. Right? Those families are old English, and they still have their connections there. So that's one piece. The second piece was, and he said that in a different way more than once in different occasions during this 2-day visit, okay, or day and a half, okay. The other one is that he articulated that His Royal Highness, Prince William, will make a good king in his time. What is the signal? The signal is we back the crown. Now, I'll give you a proviso. I almost guarantee you, because we're doing it here, right? We're fighting it out here. This is why Charlie Kirk was just assassinated, right? The crown's going to have to live up to its obligations, right? It's going to have to stand up to being an executive, but we're going to provide its security. We will secure it. We'll use Eric Prince and his people if we have to, right?
Yeah.
And we'll use our intelligence capability to weed out who in the House Guard is, a traitor. So, and we're not looking to replace the crown. We're not looking to instantiate liberal democracy, because that's falling apart anyways. It's a lie anyways. But point being is this. He both supported His Majesty the King, which provides current legitimacy to the current executive, and articulated that will support if there's an abdication or if there's death. I personally think and Graham, I'm with you. I think Charles chose the name Charles specifically because of its history in our, its meaning in our history. And I think he's conducted himself in such a way. He did wonderful things in the first 3 days of going to all the domains and talking to them and saying the right things and all of that. And I do agree. I think he's acted and conducted himself in the ways that he had to to survive and keep his children alive, but it was a long drawn out abdication. And now he's probably going to abdicate for health reasons, which are legitimate. But the point being is that America will support the crown, and take the crown out of it. I mean, it's very important, but it's the executive. We will support the executive of the Dominion, right? Yeah. And we will also support the transition of power to the next hereditary, right, executive. And that's what we're supporting. And that was very clear. And then he went to go see Starmer and the government in a state visit, right? It was done this way on purpose.
Let me bring, thank you. Let me bring
sorry. Yeah.
Graham, please. Your take on this?
There's a few things I'll say. First of all, reference to a good king, right? I do agree. I always look at what the other side are doing, and if the other side, meaning the communists, are actively saying, not my king, I don't like Charles, right? Take that away from it. Why are the enemy stabbing him? Because they don't want him there, right? So I just want to make sure the audience understand this. In Europe, not just England, but the whole of Europe, they used to have something called a dog king, right? And the dog king was somewhat, so what happened was the enemy took control of your nation, right? They took control of your nation, and they dressed a dog, put it on the throne, put a crown on it, put a cape around it, and and the enemy used to talk to the dog, and the dog would bark, and then the enemy would translate what the dog said to the people, right? And said, "This is what your king has commanded," right? It was a complete Mickey take, but that's what they used to do, right? It's called a dog king. They took control of the king, right? And they just put this. It was obvious to everyone it was a dog, right? But that's what they used to do. I personally believe that they killed, after the Second World War in 1952, they murdered the Queen's father, who was the king.
Yes.
Right? Because they could not control him. They
killed his grandfather, her grandfather before as well.
So, and it's not the first time in history.
Correct.
They were poisoned. So that king died in his sleep of a heart attack. Next thing you know, Queen Elizabeth, 21 years old, is put into the frame as the Queen, right? We lost more rights under Queen Elizabeth than any other sovereign ever, not because she was a bad person, but because she was being controlled, right?
She had no power, yes.
She had no power.
Because she loved her children, yes.
And I think King Charles, you may be right about King Charles, and they're having a chat with him and a deal with him in the background. I think King William will be a different king, right?
Yes.
I think people are going to see the difference. But majorly, what needs to be said about this, one of the events that happened there, and I think this is very, very, very significant, President Trump and Melania, First Lady, went to the St. George's Chapel in Windsor. It is the #1 chapel in England. There is nothing higher than that. Not even Westminster Abbey, not York Abbey, not anywhere in the country. That is the #1 place to go, and they chose to go there.
And who they lay a wreath? What did they do? They laid a wreath on Her Majesty's tombstone, right? On her, right?
And that happened at St. George's.
Yes.
Again, patron saint of England. You've currently got the English flag going up all over the country, right?
Yep.
And what President Trump and the First Lady did with the King of England was paid respect in that chapel.
Correct. To that family.
To that
family. Right? Okay, so this is not a thing to go down, but I do want to put it in this conversation with respect to being under duress, right? And that in special operations and intelligence worlds, we know about guys being under duress, and I won't talk it here, but we have whole systems and processes and codes and everything else that we use to articulate to somebody that you're under duress when you can't say it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I want to go back to something about the family being under duress and violent duress. And it is a historical thing that goes back several centuries that a monarch, once they get aged, get killed suddenly so that their heir can take it on. It's one of the ways you maintain control of the monarch, because we can kill you at any time. We just killed your dad or your mother.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I believe that Lord Mountbatten was genuinely trying to break the control of the Praetorians, and that's why he was blown up in Ireland and his grandkids. I believe very firmly, looking at things, knowing certain peoples, that Lord Mountbatten was trying to break this so that this final theft of the commons, this final destruction of the English peoples wouldn't happen. And how? By taking control of the safety and security of Her Majesty. So how was it painted? He was mounting a coup. Well, it would look a lot like that if he was trying to remove your security. That's the threat to Her Majesty and the family. Would look a lot like a coup to you, not to them. So I think Lord Mountbatten was the last time, right? And who was his son? Who was his, who did he raise in the palace? His Royal Highness, Prince Philip, right? And what had happened to Prince Philip's family? Didn't he have to escape in an orange box from frickin' Greece because of the same problem in the Greek royal family? So point I'm getting at is this, okay? All this constitutional stuff has to happen because we are a constitutional people. We are a common law people. Our civilization is built around the dooms of Alfred, and they have held for over 1,000 years. And so that has to be restored. Critical to that is the balance of power between executive, right, parliament, and the people. There's one missing piece here, okay? There's one missing piece that has been steadily, and really, really, this I despise Blair for more than anything else because he knew exactly what he was doing. The executive cannot be safe and secure without a strong nobility that has its own men-at-arms that it can bring to the aid of the crown. Because parliaments are going to do what parliaments do. Judiciaries are going to do what judiciaries do throughout history. What did His Majesty Alfred the Great do? He hung 40 plus judges because they were acting against their oath. Yeah, and they were conducting legal, arguments on behalf of the Vatican. Well, not the Vatican at the time, but on behalf of the Catholic Church, and not on behalf of the English crown and the English people. He hung them, right? So we have that here in the Americas. We have we have Eric Princes, and we have private military contractors, and we have a whole lot of special operations guys that'll you pay a contract will come. The United Kingdom doesn't have that anymore because the lords have been diminished. They've been steadily impoverished. They've been steadily removed. So, sorry, Rich. Yeah,
sorry. Thank you, Ian. And Starmer wants to diminish them further by
wants to
lords within the assembly, right?
Yes.
Great. I want to come to you. You're about to say something. Please say that. But also, Ian has said on programs with me before what he thinks King William will be like. But I want to get your take on that. How do you think King William will rule? Because I understand also, I think from you, Ian, that it was Queen Elizabeth that raised King William.
Yes, hand raised him. Yes.
So there's two things. Firstly, is to say that the people who are in control of the executive today are a group of people called the Fabians. The Fabian Society are Marxists. Keir Starmer is a Marxist, and a Fabian. Sadiq Khan is a Fabian.
Shabana Mahmood is a Fabian.
Yeah, and let me think of the other one who it was. Tony Blair, and his entire cabinet were Fabians. So what you're seeing is a communist takeover. Getting back to and by the way, there is a great book out there from 1960 something, which it actually says socialism and the Fabian highway into the USA. And if you read that book, everything in that book that you read now is telling you exactly what they're doing now. And the only person that I ever heard talk about the Fabians in America was Eric Trump. Right. So in other words, at the highest level, they know who the Fabians are.
Yeah.
So on the other side of it, with King William, I don't have. So again, I'm not a royalist. I'm not a royalist because I've seen what they've done to us. The only definition I will put to everyone out there, especially in America, there is a big difference between treason and sedition. Right. Sedition is when you go against your government, right? Treason is when you go against your ancestors, your current population,
your culture, your civilization. Yeah.
You are taking out your country, and you have acted to do so. Yeah. There is no plea pardonable to treason, not by the king, the executive, or anyone else. It's the only one that you cannot plead against.
I'm going to fundamentally I'm going to agree with you in principle. I'm going to fundamentally disagree with you in another way. Okay? If you love your people and genuinely love your people, and you have barbarians and enemies, sophisticated barbarians and enemies within every bit of the halls of power, do you just martyr yourself? Do you run out and say something, this is what's happening, and then they kill you or your family? Because then what do? They just discredit you. They were crazy, like King George III. I don't think King George III was crazy at all. I think he played kind of like Trump did.
Well, the only argument I would say against that is St. Edmund, King Edmund.
Great.
He was murdered by the Danes for not renouncing his faith because he was a true Christian, and they used him as target practice. With bows and arrows strapped to a tree and cut his head off.
Totally get it. Got it. Great. When was that? How much more sophisticated? How much more power is in the hands of government now? Right? How much more laws do we have? How much more press and media and oligarchs and all of that do we have now?
But I get it. If you allow treason for any excuse, and especially duress, you will encourage treason. If you're the king, then you have to stand up. Find someone, it don't matter where it is, you will find loyalists to you that will not betray.
So the last time that happened, the king was beheaded. His name was King Charles I, and he was beheaded for doing this. And what happened? Cromwell came from it. The nobility and the people got murdered. And then what happened after that? 2 puppet kings were put on the throne. Why? Because nobody trusted kings. Because the whole lie about King Charles I had been so promoted, so sold, and the whole down with princes had been so put in place, and the decadence and the Satanism of princes and all of that psyop that had been going on for a century. Right? So there was a king that did martyr himself. That is King Charles I.
Okay.
And what happened? The people did not rally. The people did not come. The nobility did not stand. The ones that did got killed. And what happened? The United Kingdom, what would become the United Kingdom, but the Dominion was infiltrated by enemies.
Okay.
Right? So here's the thing. Again, as I'm saying, okay, guys, I understand power. We do things like this around the world. I went to the schoolhouse to do this kind of thing, right?
Oh, great.
Okay. So here's the thing. Again, march on the crown. Maintain 1 million people, 2 million people around all the royal estates and everywhere. March on the crown, not for violence, not to rob the palaces. Don't let, agitators in the crowd stir you to violence, etc. And let the crown know you are secure. The people have your back in a way that hasn't been that way for almost 400 years. We have your back, but you have to live up to your obligations. And then let's see. Then we can get a better idea, because now the king can sally forth. Now, even if there's an abdication, I suspect it has to be, right? Charles, unfortunately, one is too old really to take on this kind of fight, to be quite frank, because it's a lot of all-nighters and legal stuff and all of this, resetting of balances and lies and deception, all that. But we don't really know, Graham, to your point. If that happens and the king martyrs himself, now we got something. Right? Instead of just another asshole being put on the throne and maintained and controlled from behind the scenes.
Okay. So there's a couple of quick things I'll say to that, right? And again, this always strikes me as slightly weird. Not weird. I mean it in a nice,
unusual,
polite way, right? You've got a constitutional republic where the people vote for their king. That is what the Anglo-Saxons used to do. That's why it is still part of the coronation process. People don't understand that. The king is actually elected by the people.
Correct.
Right? So just to get to your...
Elevated,
there is an element of this, right? So at the moment, petitioning the king is very important in common law, right? One, we've currently got a petition in the Parliament that has just received 350,000 plus signatures, right?
Wonderful.
It's electronic, but it doesn't matter. It's there. It's a petition to Parliament. The process is this. If they ignore that petition, the next part of that is to petition the Crown directly, which we've already got thousands of physical signatures and a prayer on a petition. If the Crown ignores that, the next stage is armed rebellion. That is the process.
So here's the thing. Okay, totally agree. But let's not go straight to armed rebellion, because that's what our enemies want. They want us to kill another king.
I agree.
So what we do is, of course, Parliament's going to drag out and drag out and drag out, etc. Right? There needs to be a time limit on how long Parliament has, and that doesn't get to be set by Parliament procedure because they'll just change procedures. When the direct petition occurs, it should occur in the form of 2 million people, English peoples across all of Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, marching on royal dominions, royal estates, and letting them know, here's our grievance, and we will stay here, Your Majesty, until we hear back from you on this grievance. And what do you do then? What you do is you prevent the knives in the dark, the knives in the back, from forcing the monarch to act against that grievance.
It has already received 3,000 signatures in Northern Ireland.
Marvellous.
So then it's coming over to England, Wales, and Cornwall, etc., and Scotland, and and basically the grievance is there. You are not protecting the people, right?
Yes. So you are not acting as an executive. I mean, it's that simple. You are not upholding. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that is a proper process. And if the king was then to ignore it, and the people was to say, "Well, we're going to rise up," right? That's part of what
then
we're doing
legal
now.
Right.
We're pushing, and we're literally got Operation Show the Colours, so that different nations are pushing up their colours and putting them out. And then the United States of America steps in and says, "Listen, these people have gone through the proper common law process. Yep. They have petitioned Parliament, you ignore them. They've petitioned the Crown, you've ignored them. They are now calling for armed rebellion. They are showing their colours and showing you they're baring their teeth. They're about to jump up and bite your ass, right?
Yes.
What are you going to do?" And then the Americans will say, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're not going to step in, but to assist the people, we put the 6th and 5th Fleet either side, right, of Great Britain, and then we'll let the people in charge, the Fabians, decide if they want to leave."
Well, I'm going to put it a different way. I agree with that.
But here's, you're going to have to stop.
One piece, okay? One piece.
Oh,
I suspect there's going to be letters of marque. There's going to be old titles recovered. And there's going to be some of us old bastards that said, bring your men and fight for the crown and restore sovereignty to the people. So that I'll leave it right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you both. It's absolute joy, delight, and an education. I hope it's been like that for everybody. Please share this far and wide, and afterwards, because I've got a hard stop, and I know you got an appointment, Graham. Is that I'm going to reschedule them as well. I'd like to make this a.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Link to their stuff in the description below. All the best. Bye bye.
You want me to wear my COVID mask?
Oh gosh.
Graham, aren't you having your daily boosters, mate?
No, I am not.
Daily boosters. My gosh!
I never touched any of that.
That's right.
I told them what it was to start with, and that mask. I used to walk around Tesco's, and they'd come up to me and say, "You've got to wear a mask." So I said, "I am wearing my mask."
You know what that?
And if you're scaring people, wear the right mask.
You ever see the movie Big Trouble in Little China? Yeah. That looks like the little, the creature in the air that was watching for the bad guy. That's what that looks like. But as to your daily dose,
what's that?
Right, keep COVID away. It's a pint of beer.
That's it.
Daily dose.
Boost your testosterone naturally and rev up your engine with Immense Boost. bit.ly/CryptoRichBoost and order your testosterone boost today.